comment is the deputy secretary is kind of out and about, and she's doing the college campus tour.
I got an email from a former intern who had seen her PowerPoint presentation. She got a picture of our farm in it, which is great.
And then my question is, do you think if Yale sponsors a Farm Bill session, it will regain its land grant status? Sorry.
I like that.
I just had to say that. Michael, are you ready?
Good morning. First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Hamilton and Drake University for inviting me. It's nice to get out of Tucson. My name is Michael Kotetsuwa Johnson. I'm currently a PhD student, as says on the slide, at the Department of Natural Resources and American Indian Studies, and my focus is basically policy, watershed management, and, like I said, a minor in American Indian Studies. This is the overview that I'm going to be presenting today. Like I said, Hopi dry farming practices, Hopi farming statistics, barriers, solutions, and my conclusions. First of all, I want to kind of talk about Hopi dry farming because a lot of people don't know what dry farming is, but this is the kind of area that is usually pretty involved when it comes to dry farming. 45 to 5,000 feet, we only get 6 to 10 inches of annual precipitation. We have 130 growing degree days, plant on sandy, loam-type soils, and desert shrubs and grasses. And we use no irrigation. That's why they call it dry farming. So first part of my presentation is going to be an overview, just a quick overview of some of the practices and techniques we have. And the second part will be, like I said, some of the barriers that not only the Hopi farmers have, but most American Indian farmers across the country. So why do we farm? That's a house that I recently finished building. That's where I do my studying and stuff when I'm home. Anyways, farming to Hopi is a way of life since time immemorial. It's a significant part of our culture. Hopi survival through subsistence-type agriculture. It's also integral to community development, and it also teaches us our morals and our values from an early age. Most important factors for Hopi crop production is soil moisture, of course, snowfall, monsoon rains, and weed control. Areas planted alluvial floodplains, which you see right there, that's just the monsoon runoff after an event, near springs or washes, and on sandy hills. Some of our planting methods are corn planted by hand or modified planter, and we plant 8 to 12 inches deep, believe it or not. Our corn, we have heirloom varieties. All our seeds are heirloom varieties, so they're able to come up from that depth. Beans by hand, 2 to 3 inches. Melon squash, 2 to 3 inches. Our spacing is 10 feet apart. It's not your typical northwest or northeast farm where they plant, 14-inch rows, 1 inch apart. And we plant in clumps like you would see up there, and there's a number of reasons for that. Weed, pest, and soil water management. We use no herbicides or pesticides. Weeds managed by hand or modified plow. The tractor up there is a modified plow. It's not your typical cultivator. It's something that we invented where it only takes about 2 inches off the soil, just enough to cut the weeds. The soil moisture is the number one factor in successful farming. We use natural brushes for plant protection to fight off soil erosion, our winds, and heavy rain. We have check dams or small hills used for water management. Now, this is very basic agriculture, as basic as you can get, but it works. You don't need a lot of money to do what we need to do out there, because we've been doing this for over 2,000 years in the same area. Storage and seed collection. Crops are dried and stacked in the home, or they're stored in galvanized trash cans or jars, and they're always cleaned and restored every spring. That's the key, so they keep the bugs and everything else like that. Seed selection is done by looking for certain traits, and this is through the traits we look through have been passed from generation to generation, like looking at what ears have real hard kernels that we know will survive a harsh desert summer. And we also look at some of the size of the plants during harvest. It's just observation like any other science that they teach you in school. These are some of our Hopi farming statistics according to the 2000 Census of Agriculture. Currently, they say there's 287 farmers, but there's probably a lot more. Just a lot of people don't take time to fill out the census, and we have a lot of youth that are out there that are still involved. 10 years or more farming experience, that's pretty typical. Some of it goes way back even before that. Majority of the farmers are 35 and over. There's been an increase of women Hopi farmers. It didn't used to be like that, but because some of the men aren't living up to their responsibility, sad to say, the women are getting more involved because they need these things they need the crops for their weddings and their ceremonies and their social gatherings. A majority of our farms are only 1 to 9 acres, so that we do have 1 acre farms. Their farm is 1 acre. And 0% of our crops go for animal feed. We don't feed our cattle with that. We do have a lot of cattle out there, but they're mostly what I call cash incentives. We really don't manage them that well, but they help the person out there that doesn't have the great income, they're able to pay for things at times. Now, these are some of my barriers, and this is one of the questions I raised. What do you do when you have these kind of circumstances? You know, you have no land title, you have no business plan because crops are mainly used for subsistence. Basically, there's no capital because a lot of the people don't have jobs, and so they have low income, if at all. Most income is derived from arts and crafts. You have no collateral because we are in trust status, so therefore, there's nothing that the banks or any lenders could take anyways. FFA and NRCS contracts, and loan applications are often too cumbersome or hard to understand, and that's because the educational level out there isn't that great. And if I don't know if you've ever seen an FFC loan application, but man, those things are thick. Like look at the Webster's Dictionary or something like that. Here's some of the solutions that I came up. Like I said, I'm hoping I'll be going into policy. I will be going into policy to help combat some of these federal Indian issues. And so these are some of the solutions that I came up with. Tribes could issue a letter stating that the operator had control of the area being farmed, as required by the FFA loans applications, such as the issuing of grazing permits. FFA business plans, they must address subsistence issues or food security issues as called for by law. And what I mean by that is that there's got to be other ways in trying to meet the criteria of what FFA has to do. As far as like what we do is like trying to raise enough food to help ourselves, but still having the problem of trying to get a $10,000 loan to buy a simple tractor. The federal government could back farming-related loans because of this trust status, this ward to guardian status, and that's a whole different ballgame right there. And if you ever want to look at federal Indian law, just take time to do that. It's a very complicated process, as I've been hearing here. I'd rather have federal grants instead of loans to Hopi farmers and other Indian farmers because that would eliminate some, if not all, of what FFA requires and other agency requires. To me, there's nothing better than getting a grant. It's like when I go to school, I get scholarships and grants. If I had a loan, I'm still paying back on my school loans, but there's a big difference, as far as that's concerned. The tribe or Indian nonprofit could apply to the federal government or NGO, then disperse funds to individual farmers. I think that's also a good idea, too. Here's some of my conclusions. Farming is the way of life for Hopi people and must be preserved at all costs, first before venturing out into farm product ventures. I've had a conversation with a few people, and they say, why don't you sell your products? Why don't you, go out and produce these things? For one thing, we'll never be able to meet the supply. We have droughts every year. And I'm more worried about preserving our seed and getting things back into the community at a level where we can, feed ourselves in a way like we used to. I know we won't go back to the 1800s again, but I sure would like the kids to start farming again, because that gives them a good set of values and a good way of living. And until I solve that problem, I'll never be able to, meet the demand of what other people want. So that's why I'm here today. The next thing is continued adaptation to the environment and Western technology over time is the key and has been one of the keys to the preservation of Hopi farming. And when I'm talking about adaptation, what I'm talking about is things like I showed you, that modified tractor cultivator. And then I have my own, I built my own planter, one-row planter, which enables me to plant one-row seeds. It's a simple thing. It's a tube with like a little hockey puck at it, and it goes into the ground about 12 inches, and I'm able to just someone step behind me and just drop a corn through the funnel, 10 to 12 kernels, and it comes up just like you would when you're using a planting stick. So, and it's all about that, because, the Hopis over time have learned to adapt to not only the environment, but some of these technologies are running. They don't always use them to look at them, and if they don't help the society, then they just get rid of them, because I don't think, in my mind, technology is the answer for everything. We got to go back to our traditional basics and values, because that's what allowed us as a people to continue to thrive in the Southwest for well over 2,000 years. Also, the federal government agencies must provide better technical assistance, and federal legislation must be amended I'm talking about the Farm Bill and other things because, you know, with laws, you have to have your name in there. It wasn't until, I think, 2005 that we were actually able to insert the word Indian into the Farm Bill. Because if you don't do that with legislation, you're often left out because we're not like states. We are like states, but we're not like states. We're separate political entities. So we have to have that language within legislation. Otherwise, we don't get the funding that I feel we rightly deserve. And that's about all I have to say. And thank you. That's one of my fields right there. It's a different type of agriculture, but it's sustaining, it's environmental friendly. And thanks again for letting me speak. And have a good day.